Welcome to my sunchoke story. Sunchokes look like this when they're done. When they're growing, they're very tall, taller than me, taller than you probably, and they have a beautiful yellow flower on top. That flower to people that came from Europe was reminiscent of a sunflower. So the word for sunchokes being Jerusalem artichoke comes from a mispronunciation of girasole or girasola, which does mean sunflower. And the native word that I have found is something similar. It means root of the sun, but most people call them sunchokes, and that name fits them really well. They're bright yellow, sunny wildflowers, and they make this underground tuber, which is a really cool little vegetable. And I'm gonna be digging for it as I tell this story. I've had this plant since before I left for Virginia. I see one already. There she is. Oh my gosh. It's perfect. Look at that. See, I thought I would have to dig more. Okay, well that's that. I guess we're ready to jump into the story. So this is our tuber. This is a pretty good size one. A lot of them are smaller, but I've had this plant for a long time. It's a happy one. I'll be incorporating this into our meal tomorrow. Okay, got my basket. Let me harvest my little sunchokes. Here they are. Actually quite big. They're not usually this big. The ones you see in the store will probably be smaller, like these. Wow, what a good harvest. Okay, let's start my story. So the story I'm telling, just to refresh, is the Native American creation story. I am not Native, but I am definitely a big believer in making intentional time in and around what I celebrated as Thanksgiving to make intentional space to talk about Native foods, Native peoples, Native traditions, because I grew up in the Americanized holiday, right? You have your turkey, your stuffing, your football, your beer, and that's pretty much it. It's kind of hard to know what to talk about or how to talk about it, and I'm not very good at it. I do stumble a lot, but I want to make that space and give room for the stories that I didn't get any exposure to whatsoever. And I think that they're very beautiful, and I live on North America, so it's important for me to know. So if you'd like to share with a younger person who maybe has not had exposure to Native American stories, as I said in my little intro, I'm going to be keeping this one pretty PG, so they can share as well and learn an interesting story about the Native people's creation tale. Legend, myth, story, however you want to call it. And it is about North America specifically. So the creation story, as I've heard it, begins with the Great Spirit and with a woman who is pregnant or becomes pregnant and falls from the sky. She's part of the sky people, and in a lot of traditions she's called Sky Woman. In some traditions Sky Woman has a daughter called Earth Woman, but not in every tradition. So we'll focus on Sky Woman. And Sky Woman is falling to Earth, and as she's falling, the animals that are around are trying to break her fall and save her life. In some traditions, I think she does fall all the way into the water, and they come to save her. So the animal that features most prominently is a turtle. So this turtle, I think he swims to the surface, and sometimes he catches her, sometimes she does fall, and the animals bring her to the turtle. And this great turtle has risen to the surface, and he is going to bear earth on his back. Sometimes it's brought by a muskrat, sometimes it's brought by birds. It depends on the story and the tribe that is telling it. But at any rate, some animals bring earth to the back of this great turtle, and that's Turtle Island. That's where we live in North America. And Sky Woman has 2 children in most traditions, and they're usually good and evil. In other traditions, she does have a daughter who is Earth Woman, and sometimes Earth Woman and Sky Woman are the same person. So it depends on the people's telling the story. For the purpose of my sunchoke story, we're gonna go with Earth Woman. Earth Woman passes away, and she gives from her body different crops. So from her breast comes corn or maize, from her belly comes beans, and from her hands, I believe it's squash, but sometimes the Three Sisters garden does come from her breast. Again, it depends on whose version you're hearing. And the one that I'm focused on today is sunchokes. Sunchokes came from her feet. So even though Sky Woman passed away, from her feet in some traditions comes sunchokes. And they are a wonderful crop. They are so hardy. They're really drought tolerant, and they can take a lot. This plant has been across the whole country with me, and it still gave me quite a harvest so far. I haven't even gotten to the bottom. And there's a really cool story about sunchokes, about sunchokes as a staple food for people who are walking or traveling. They would bring sunchokes and plant them, and then the next time they would come back, there would be food. So the sunchoke has this really cool ability to kind of like multiply itself underground, which can be good or bad depending on how you look at it. I love it. I think that's a great thing. But if you only want to grow a small amount and be able to have them not all over your yard later, this might not be the one for you, because inevitably you're gonna leave a piece behind and you'll get more. You'll always get more. The first time I had sunchokes was at a house I was renting, and they came from under the fence from my neighbor who had planted them in the 70s. And the descendants of those plants were still going strong. So I got to have quite a lot of sunchokes when I lived there. I wonder if there's anything else. They are harvestable all winter, so they are best in the middle of winter. We've had a little frost, so I feel fine about harvesting them. And they're pretty big, but they're always better if you leave them until like January. It's a little cold. That's basically my story. It's amazing tuber. It's native to North America. The sunchoke. Really, really cool. I hope you enjoyed the creation story. And if you live in a place that has a different creation story, I would love to hear it. That was everything. Have a beautiful day and happy rest of your week.